So people consider the Constitution to be probably the worst weapon in the game, and okay, looking at the stats compared to the other DMRs, I get it. Common complaints about the Constitution are the iron sights, lack of damage, iron sights, lack of heavy armor pen, iron sights, slow reload speed, iron sights, low magazine capacity, iron sights, medium armor pen, iron sights.
Alright, I get it!
Let's tackle the Constitution's biggest critique, the sight picture. For the uninformed, the Constitution in lore is a reproduction of the M1903 Springfield rifle, specifically the A3 variant that replaced the original open sights of the rifle with what are known as peep sights. Well, technically Helldivers 2 version is modeled on various rifle, but it's easier just to call it the Springfield reproduction. Okay, so here's a toy of an M14. Really, it's more like a mini 14, but whatever, it serves our purposes. Here is the sight picture. What usually happens when looking through it with the naked eye and some cameras is you focus on the front post, at which point the back becomes out of focus and you can see more of what you are aiming at. Gamers hate these sights because they do not function like this in video games. You'd have to specifically program them to do this, like in the case of the Brothers in Arms games, or increase the size of the ring like what Call of Duty has done with the M1 Garand in most of their games. With Helldivers, they go the Call of Duty route and make the rear aperture larger so it's easier to see. I think people's problem with these sights is the distance from the camera when aiming. In most other games, the sights are pretty close, which gives you a larger picture to work with, but here, the camera is further back, making it more difficult to aim with. So this has led to some people just outright asking for a scope, or downloading mods that cut the iron sights down or replace the rifle model entirely, which is fine, because I use mods too. But giving this weapon a scope would just make it a full-on marksman rifle, which, let me tell you, isn't how it should be used. Of course, comparing a bolt action to 2 semi-autos and a lever gun is going to show the bolt action to be the worst offering. It's like comparing a Martini Henry to a Barrett M82. It's not gonna work. Instead, compare it to the default Liberator and you start to see something. Wait, you don't see it? Let me break it down for you. The Constitution has a flat damage boost, with the trade-off being lower capacity, higher recoil, and a slower rate of fire. So what I am saying is while the Constitution pales in comparison to weapons in its class, i.e. marksman rifles, I propose the Constitution was meant as a side grade for the Liberator. Think about it. Both are unlocked by default, so it's obvious that the Constitution would be balanced around being a default weapon, and it makes sense why it would only have medium armor pen instead of heavy armor pen. Giving a new player a rifle with that kind of ability is pretty silly. Alright, so quick side note. The argument for AP4 comes from the fact Helldivers 1's Constitution could damage heavy enemies. While this is true, Helldivers 1 does not have an armor system like Helldivers 2, and honestly, it should not be used to justify AP4. Okay, back to the main point. So, is all of this just theory? Yes. Could I be pulling connections out of my ass? Yes. But consider for a moment the Constitution's shortcomings as a support marksman rifle, and the fact it has a bayonet, which isn't a slouch. It can one-hit kill most weak enemies, automaton troopers fall before one strike, voteless heads pop when they get stabbed. And while the bayonet is powerful, the gun part of the gun isn't weak as people claim it is. This isn't a Nerf gun by any means. Headshots are still a one-hit kill for light and medium enemies. Targeting weak points like you would with the Liberator is still very effective. I mean, why wouldn't it be? It's a gun that does something like 2.4 times the damage of the base Liberator per shot, with the added benefit of increased melee damage and medium armor penetration, which the bayonet also has, which means it can work great as a finisher for scout striders and can also destroy the engines of tanks if you're really that crazy, which I am. Which is extremely silly and fits the meme gun stereotype this weapon has gotten, and honestly should be moved from the marksman class and into the special weapons class so people stop comparing it to the other DMRs. The Constitution excels at being an assault weapon, and I do not mean a traditional assault weapon, but a weapon you assault the enemy and cause bodily harm with. But I will not ignore the drawbacks and limitations that come when using the Constitution, so this is where your secondary comes in. The default Peacemaker is serviceable alongside the Constitution, and is a good fallback weapon in case you need to deal out damage quickly against smaller targets swarming you. Personally, I bring either the Verdict or Senator, but the Talon works great too. I feel like most players are unable or unwilling to see why I and many other people love the Constitution in its current state, and that is because of the challenge. You look at the numbers and say, ew, bad. I look at the numbers and say, 5 rounds of peep sights, nah, I'd win. I don't expect everyone to get my personal experiences, but this is genuinely what I think makes the Constitution so fun to use. And saying it needs things like heavy armor pen or a scope is taking away the challenge from me and the people who love this silly little gun. Instead, Arrowhead should do what they did with the R6 Deadeye and make a modern bolt-action rifle that fills the sniper role and keep the Constitution as a meme gun that is really fun to use. Anyway, thanks for watching, and a big thanks to the Helldivers Discord, specifically the Helldivers 1 portion, for clearing up the misconception surrounding the heavy armor penetration of the original Constitution. With that said, I'll catch you later.